Thank you.
So it's wonderful to be joined by Suzi Digby OBE, a conductor, educator, and cultural innovator whose career spans education, performance, and leadership. Suzi founded ORA Singers nearly 10 years ago, 10 years next year. And it's an ensemble acclaimed for its unique approach to performing Renaissance masterpieces and newly commissioned work, creating a dialogue between the past and the present. This bold artistic vision has earned ORA Singers a reputation across the UK and worldwide for redefining how audiences experience and enjoy choral music. Thank you, Suzi, for joining me. Real privilege to be able to talk to you. Got a number of questions and would like to sort of really explore, the realities of running a cultural organisation, your perspective on the future of choral music. I'd like to understand a little bit about how you sort of nurture talent, lessons in leadership, and hopefully what gives you hope for the arts in Britain today, if that's okay.
Indeed, absolutely, spot on.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again. So yes, as I in my opener, I talked of your career spanning education, performance, and cultural leadership. Talk to me about what inspired you to found ORA Singers 10 years ago, and how does it sort of really reflect your personal artistic vision?
Yes, well, I've been commissioning new choral music all over the world since 1980. I worked out the other day, that was my first commission. Basically to respond to the demands of the various groups of singers I was working with, where there is no repertoire appropriate. And so everything is about repertoire. To get the best out of a group of singers, whether they're amateur, professionals, young, old, you need the right repertoire. Challenging but achievable. And so I have been commissioning, and that has given me a really good global overview of choral composition over, since the 1980s. And I had a eureka moment one day, 11 years ago, and it occurred to me, rather like a sort of thunderbolt of enlightenment, that we are in a new golden age of choral composition. And this is something that's been fermenting since the 90s, with the basic and frankly global renaissance of choral music. Choral music returning to schools, to churches, to communities. And there's just been this exponential rise in interest in choral music, and of course
to offices
and offices. exactly And I was judge on BBC's last choir standing, which we had 7 million viewers. Now 10 years before that, and this was many years ago, the idea of having a prime time BBC entertainment program about choirs would have been laughed off. So, I've been sort of tracking this extraordinary renaissance of choral activity. And suddenly I realized in this eureka moment, in whenever it was, 11 years ago, that we are in a new golden age. And what's happened is that choral composers are finally sure-footed and confident and composing music that is of high quality, powerful, beautiful, and something that audiences want to hear. And new music, frankly, has suffered for many decades, since the breakdown of tonality, of being hostile towards beauty and melody.
Wow.
And so we've kind of come into this era where neotonality, if you like, where it is permissible to write music that is immediately beautiful, to audiences. So that's a very crude way of putting it. But
Amazing.
we have now this generation of composers producing, absolutely outstanding choral music, which will stand the test of time.
Brilliant.
And so, having had this sort of thunderbolt of enlightenment, I then realized it was incumbent on me. I mean, I'm in such a perfect, but then felt I was in the perfect situation and position, both in terms of history, but also in terms of geography and the culture in this country of producing the best choral musicians in the world, that it was incumbent on me to commission, and to commission big. So I declared that I would commission 100 works in 10 years. This was met with some skepticism.
Can imagine.
Because I then thought, well, when was the last golden age of small-scale a cappella composition? We haven't had one since the Renaissance. That was the last golden age. And now we're in a new golden age. And so why not connect the two, create a legacy for this century that will be viewed in a few hundred years' time as a sort of legacy of the golden age of the 21st century, and invite these composers to reflect on Renaissance masterworks.
Incredible.
So that was how the whole concept was born. Now, I have to say, we really were ahead of the game. I mean, it's now ubiquitous to program old with new.
Yeah.
And the idea of reimaginings and reflections is ubiquitous. But when we started, there was a lot of skepticism that the new works could possibly stand up against alongside the great iconic masterpieces of the European Renaissance, the likes of Tallis, Byrd, Victoria, Palestrina. So that was how ORA Singers was born. But alongside that, you have to enshrine that legacy with the best performers, the best recordings that you can, with the best singing musicians in the world. So I assembled 18 of our finest elite singing musicians and endeavored then to commission and record and perform these 100 new works.
An incredible story. It's an incredible story. Tell me, is the new music, the new choral music, the commissioned music today, are there, not every piece, of course, but are pieces being that could stand next to the classics of the Renaissance time? We do it as well as they did back then?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. Now, with respect to my assessment of the quality of these commissions, and with respect to critics and audiences, and indeed singers, because they are the best, they live inside this Renaissance music. So if they give a thumbs up to a new piece and say, this is good, our audiences respond well. We have now 10 million streams worldwide. We know we've had fantastic validation. And I think the validation of the caliber of these commissions is threefold. The fact that we've won 2 Ivor Novello Best Composer Awards for 2 of our commissions. The fact that I'm now being asked to give seminars to choral conductors in America. I've just come back from America, where I've been presenting ORA repertoire to these hungry choral directors, 50 hungry choral directors in America, who see this repertoire and cannot wait to get it back to their choirs.
Fantastic.
And so I think the caliber of these 100 pieces, and also that some of them have gone viral. Some of them are being performed by choirs all around the world without us making any effort to do so. So those 3 factors, I think, validate our choice of composers and what we've got out of those composers.
Amazing. Amazing. Talk to me a little bit about a moment or a project with ORA Singers that felt particularly transformational for you, the ensemble, or the audience.
Well, I hope, and I'm not doing my job if this is not the case, that every single public performance we give is transformational for our audiences.
Yeah.
And that's why we try to give a really immersive performance with very high production values. And but I think and I do have to sort of give myself some time to think back on those moments over the last 10 years. And I think the one that is really rises to the top and was transformational for all of us was during lockdown, when somehow we managed to, in the heart of lockdown, we managed to pull off a performance in Tate Modern Turbine Hall of the premiere of Sir James Macmillan's 40-part reflection of Tallis's 40-part Speminalium. Now, as the producer was counting down, we were being live streamed all over the world. And this was 3 months into lockdown, and we were all socially distanced by 3 meters. It was like a football pitch, my singer spread out. And she counted us in, and she said there are already 70,000 online.
Incredible.
Such was the hunger for live music making. And I was getting messages from people in Antarctica who, everybody, because there had been no live music making. And for us, for our singers, my singers who had not worked for 6 months, we didn't know what the future had in store for us. We were frightened, and for musicians not to be able to make music with others is a slow death.
Yeah.
And so to bring all these, we had 1 hour in the space to rehearse, because that's all we were allowed. And the reviewers were at home doing their reviews. So the feeling of being able to make music again, having been denied this for 6 months and not knowing what the future had in store for us, and having to pull off a premiere of an incredibly demanding new work, plus Speminalium, which has its challenges, that frisson, the excitement of it. And it was just, I cannot describe the feeling of it. But your question was, was this transformational? And I think it was exactly halfway. It was our 50th commission, which serendipitously.
Yeah.
And I think it was transformational because it made us realize, the value of what we're doing, what we're bringing people, what how we are so much more than the sum of our parts through the vehicle of the greatest expression of human creativity, live and with our voices.
Amazing.
So it was very special.
In the midst of the unknown that we were all in at that time. Unbelievable. Talk to me a little bit about you as a cultural leader, and the challenges of running an organization in today's climate. So the sector faces huge challenges from a funding perspective, from an audience engagement perspective. What do you see as sort of the most urgent issues facing choral music and the wider arts community today?
That is a huge question, covering many, many different aspects of our concerns. Well, great art always finds a way through.
Yeah.
And as a leader of an organisation which is facing many of arts organisations are facing existential challenges.
Yep.
So those that will survive are those that are, first of all, you have to be so incredibly passionately committed and believe in what you're doing as being life-changing, world-saving, your attitude towards your gift, if you like, has to be all-consuming, and you have to believe that it is the most important thing in the world, which I do. That you have the ability to galvanize and create soul shift. So that it has to come from that very high point of belief in what you're doing. And then if you have that belief and you have a really good vision and mission and strategy, then you can bring others with you.
Yep.
You have to, same as being a leader, you have to inspire confidence and faith, absolute confidence and absolute faith. So you can only do that if you have absolute confidence and absolute faith yourself, and authenticity.
Right.
You have to have authenticity, and the more difficult the world comes, the more important your authenticity has to be. Now, it all boils down to money. And the fact is that there is more money around in the hands of fewer than in history. Yeah. And so you have to be, and it's like having a baby. If you knew how excruciating it was going to be, you'd never have it in the first place. And so, you have to, the huge percentage of your time is given to how can we afford this? How can we get the money to support it? And so that is unfortunately an occupational hazard, but we have to embrace it. And fundraising, like everything else, that's worth doing, requires huge creativity, and but it's always possible. Mm-hmm. It's always possible, but your vision has to be big. The bigger your vision, the more likely you are to attract big money.
Yeah, interesting.
And so I think that so it requires, there's no shortcut. It requires all of these things and an incredible team. And this is why we're so lucky that we're in this epicenter in let's say London, where we have access to the greatest singing musicians in the world.
Yeah.
We have access to, extraordinary talent. And so it's almost a crime not to be activating all these advantages and make sure you succeed. Now, I don't want to paint a rosy picture, because it is very, very hard, and people are fearful, and people are being much more judicious about how they spend their money, and there are fewer and fewer budgets, and there are fewer and fewer trust funds that you can access. Correct. For important things like core costs.
Yeah.
Because without covering core costs, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
So there's no shortcut to all this. You just have to work bloody hard. You have to be clever. You have to be creative, and you have to bring people along with you. But then it's completely possible.
Amazing. You had a hugely bold artistic, ambition here, and how do you? Have you ever had to sort of pare that back? How do you balance your artistic ambitions with the realities of running a cultural organisation?
Never compromise.
Okay.
Never let the tail wag the dog.
Nice.
If you do that, you won't survive. There's no point in doing something that in compromising, because you have to, if you never lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing, then I honestly believe you will succeed. And there's no point in doing something watered down, dumbed down. You have to, it has to be of the highest quality, of the highest caliber. And if that is accessible to you, and you're in a position to galvanize that, or to be the spark, then it is incumbent on you to do so. So you just have to, you know, it's helpful to, you have to deal with pushback, you have to deal with skepticism, you have to deal with all sorts of challenges. But there's, you know, as I say, you know, in the answer to your last question, there's no shortcut. And I think that if, you know, if you are wanting to hold the banner for excellence, and you know, I always think there's no point in doing something unless it's the best in the world. You know, whatever your job is, you should aspire to do it better than anyone else can do it.
Yep.
And that's always been my attitude. Maybe that comes from my Asian roots, I don't know. But so I think that you just have to negotiate the rapids and make sure you stay afloat.
Brilliant. It sounds to me as if you guys have been very innovative already and embraced technology. But talk to me a little bit about, you know, digital innovation and how technology can and help and should, you know, play into the future of classical and choral music.
Yeah, well, it's a difficult one. I'm doing an interview for the BBC about how AI impacts the performer.
Interesting.
And you know, so it's a double-edged sword. But and of course, when we're singing Renaissance music, we're doing exactly what they were doing 500 years ago. That doesn't change. And that sort of taps into, if you like, the sort of the universal soul, you know, the susceptibility to great aesthetic beauty and the greatest achievements to mankind. But I'm rethinking now. We have to rethink the audiences of 2025 to 2035.
Okay.
We have to rethink that, because audiences are going to need and desire the visual, the dynamic movement. You know, if you think of the diet, the cultural diet of all of us now, it is visual. And so, you know, in terms of performance, you have to give your audience an aesthetically immersive experience.
Yeah.
Allowing them to be bored for 1 minute is not acceptable.
Interesting.
And so, you know, you have to think. So I, as conducting a great piece of music, am completely engaged in it, obviously, because I know it very well.
Yeah.
I have to make sure, and the great thing about choral music is it has text. It all comes from the text. So you have to carry your audience with you. So, you know, use of technology to enhance that, you know, visual images, videography, movement, and all that, I think is going to be increasingly important, to focus the ear, the eye, the heart on in terms of how we present our materials, our website, videos, for example, video recordings. How many ways can you film a group of singers singing? Not easy.
Tricky.
It is tricky. So again, video content, you have to think really creatively about how can you hold the attention of an audience for 6 minutes. So these are all things that we all in our sector think about a lot, and we're very lucky to have technology to help us. And I mean, our little brilliant office team. I mean, we do everything in house. All our design, everything is done in house. We don't outsource anything. We have a young, creative, brilliant team who are literate in terms
digital natives. Yeah.
Yes. And I think everybody now has to be digitally creative. Everyone in the admin team, everybody has to be digitally informed and literate.
Brilliant. Tell me about Well, so as a leader in the in the arts, and you work with hundreds of people throughout your long career, how do you nurture emerging talent, both within ORA Singers, but also more broadly across the sector? You have obviously been heavily involved in education throughout your life. You'll have seen, young people emerging, and how do you help them?
Well, this is such an important question, because the paradox of our times is that there is less and less support. I mean, look at state secondary schools in this country, for example. There are more and more and more and more challenges in music education.
Yep.
And yet, my view through observation is that the talent is greater than it has ever been, and the desire to be creative is greater than it's ever been. So, with respect to ORA Singers, this is all very well and good, producing a legacy for the 20th century, but what about the next generation of composers? So I'm incredibly proud of our young composer scheme and our composer pathway scheme. So 7 years ago, we got very generous funding. So again, we're not in the business of ticking boxes.
Yeah.
We want to identify, and our program is exclusively in the state sector, because our funding was contingent on that. But actually, that has enabled us to root out talent that otherwise might not be identified, and to go deep, really, really deep. So it's a very, very, very special program. So the Young Composer competition and education scheme is available completely free to every secondary state student in the UK.
Wow.
And they send in submissions, and we say, just send in a sketch, anything. And we get hundreds of submissions. We look through them, and we identify the 10 most promising. And then we identify 40 what we call apprentices. Now, the 10 most promising get something which I don't think any scheme in the world provides to this extent, which is they get a whole load of workshops and training in the basics of musicianship and composition. They get history of music. They get, how to write a melody, basic harmony, how to write textures, how to write for the voice. And then on top of all that, they get 10 hours of one-to-one tuition with one of our composers, professional. Each one 10 hours, one-to-one. Wow. And between the two of them, they hone a work.
Create something.
And they have a Renaissance work as a kickoff, and together they hone a work, which is basically all the young composer, but with the guidance of the professional composer. And then on top of that, all of those 10 works, ORA Singers then performs the final product.
Amazing.
To a public audience, and they will get a recording of that. So, and the apprentices scheme is just a whole, and they get feedback from the singers. So we workshop live each of their pieces with the singers, who then say, it's really not ideal to get a soprano to hum a top G. This is from our point of view as the singers. This works, this doesn't work so well, and they get that kind of advice. So by the end of the scheme, they have had so much, and they can kickstart the rest of their journey. And what's been amazing is that the first winner of our first competition, Emily Pedersen, she is now one of the ORA 100 commissioned composers.
Amazing.
She went on to Royal Holloway and then the Guildhall, and she's now published as a composer by Faber. She's worked with the BBC Singers. She's winning awards. And she was one of those we plucked out
Fantastic.
right at the beginning.
That's incredible. Is that funded by philanthropy, or how do you
So there's one trust fund, which is a family trust fund,
Yeah.
by an old friend of mine and supporter who's based in Sweden, and they just are so committed personally to this. And then the rest of it is funded by partly philanthropy, partly by other trusts and foundations.
Yeah, amazing. Wow, that you must be very proud of that. That's incredible.
And the composer pathway, which is the early career composers, we give 5 of them. We commission that 5 of them professionally to write a piece, and again they get a lot of support from us, and then we publicly perform those 5. We've just done it at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and I conducted these 5 pieces. They are stunningly good.
Amazing.
I mean, jaw-dropping, and I urge everybody to go onto our website, because all the recordings are there, and you can hear what the talent is out there and how vital it is that we find this and develop it.
Amazing. You've worked with a wide variety of institutions and across a wide variety of different initiatives over the years. Talking about leadership, sort of what lessons have really stayed with you, and how do they inform your work today?
Leadership. Now there's the thing. You know, I feel I'm in the foothills of learning about it, but I've come a long way. So what is leadership? Leadership is about getting the best out of your team and taking them to places that even they didn't think they could go, as a team, as a group.
Yep.
And so the most flattering, 2 flattering things that professionals have told me recently. One is a professional singer came up to me after a gig and said, you know, Suzi, you have the least ego of any conductor I've ever worked with. Yes, ego can get in the way, right? And the second thing was said to me, someone who had been observing me during the day, conducting and rehearsing and all that, said, you have a combination of collaboration and authority. And it takes, you know, when you're working with the best of the best, the elite, they've worked for everyone. They've been around the block. They're cynical. They're skeptical. And you have to earn their trust. Yep. And I think this is the same for anyone in leadership. And it can take time. And you need a few successes to earn that respect and trust. And so it's no quick fix, and you can't coerce it. I don't think that, you know, the fear model is something that, I mean, it works to a certain extent, but I think you can do just as well with a kind of collaboration, but with authority. So you have to be incredibly well prepared. You have to be it's a game of psychology. You have to be psychologically aware the whole time of each and every member of your interaction with each, because a lot of these people know more than you do in certain areas.
Yeah, they'll be better. They'll be better. Yeah.
They'll be better. And so what you're doing is you're identifying their strengths, playing away from their weaknesses, and building the team. And this has to be done in an atmosphere in a positive atmosphere. There's nothing worse than a miserable atmosphere. And particularly today, where people are likely to be, you know, feeling pressure and feeling fear and feeling anxiety. And so your duty is, in that space where you have 3 hours or whatever it is to do whatever you can to make people feel better about themselves. And I think that's always been my strength, I think, and even from school days, wanting people to make people, which is not the same as being a people pleaser.
No.
It's about, and I've been always very, very instinctively drawn to the vulnerable. And, even as a child, wanting to make friends with the unpopular kids, just feeling that was something I needed and wanted to do.
Brilliant.
And so I've always thought that, and as a teacher, if you are able to deal with to enhance the weakest link, everybody, as long as you've got the right methodology and the right resources, everybody will rise. So leadership is a complex, and something I've been studying and thinking about an enormous amount. And you learn so much by sitting at the feet of the greats. That's also very important to do. How do others do it successfully?
Yeah. Brilliant. Now, as we sort of head towards the end of our conversation, talk to me a little bit about sort of broader reflections across the sort of sector. So, what gives you hope and excitement about the future of arts in the UK, especially in terms of youth engagement and education?
Yeah, well, I think we love, us Brits, to self-flagellate and do the doom and gloom. And that a little bit of that is important, because we have to be realistic, and there's no point in pretending everything is rosy. But there are so much in terms of the leaders, and people who lead groups, and there is so much talent. The problem is it's patchy, and joining things up has not been something we're not very good at. But if you just look at the examples of good practice, we lead the world, and I'm not ashamed to say that. So, and we lead the world in partly because of our history. I mean, we're the only country in the world to have a 900-year unbroken tradition of choir schools. France had more choir schools than Britain until the Revolution. But this trunk of 900 years around which the entire ecosystem of our choral world exists is very, very, very important. And what's vital is we don't take away bricks from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a complex structure, but we have so much of value. It's our crown jewel, and we are the envy of the world. Our choral musicians, and it's worth pointing this out, that I work with choral professionals all over the world, and my professional group in Los Angeles needs 6 times the amount of rehearsal. And even then, they won't walk onto a stage with new music with the same confidence and assuredness that our guys do. A lot of that is kind of remembered.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is this amazing structure we have of our choral institutions. So there is an enormous amount, and we've already talked about talent.
Of course. Yeah.
And so the talent is there. The history, our vocal ensembles and our choral societies, and our choral world is phenomenal. I mean, it really is, and people just need to, I think more positively about the good things we have. The other good thing that inspires hope is that our government, our current government, is, although the money may not be there, but the big messages are arts are important.
Yeah.
And you cannot have EBAC, which only focuses on STEM subjects,
yeah,
and expect the arts to survive and flourish.
Yeah.
So I think there are, although we need a lot more, but I think there are some very positive things on that front that we can build on.
Agreed. Good. If you could change one thing about how the arts are perceived or supported in Britain, what would it be? Go on.
Okay, so after the war, the last war, Clement Attlee stood on a platform of 3 pillars, 3 almost human rights for the common man that they had been denied through all the suffering of the war. What were those 3 pillars?
Tell me.
Of equal importance.
Okay.
Health, education, and the arts.
Wow.
Now, who then took up the arts? Keynes. And he created the Arts Council.
Interesting.
And of course, that's when the BBC Singers was formed and all this. So the Arts Council, and it was created as a vehicle to nurture all the arts, not as a vehicle for government policy.
Yeah.
And so if I could change one thing, it would be that the Arts Council would support the arts in that fundamental way and not as a vehicle for government policy. You asked for one thing, and that's my one thing.
Interesting. So sort of complete independence from government.
Well, just what I say. Yes, it needs to be really completely rethought.
Yeah.
But it cannot be there to support government policy.
Yeah.
Is my view.
Wow. Suzi, super inspirational. Thank you so much. No, I hope you've enjoyed it.
Any interview is only as good as the questions being asked.
Well, you answered you answered the questions amazingly, and it's been brilliant to talk to you. I'm hugely appreciative.
So much.